to affirm and promote the inherent worth and dignity of all beings.
Yes.
To be clear, they're not voting this year to change the wording, only to have the discussion about this possibility of changing it. And from one perspective, simply changing the words is meaningless if we are not actively wrestling with the truth and the implications of the change. So the discussion that this proposal is gathering, that is generating, can be seen as more important than the actual change, which, it exists, in the UUA bylaws, that these are our principles. That's where it exists. I already generally use when I talk about it as all beings. It is for me. So I feel that making the change would be an important thing for us to do. Important step in the right direction for Unitarian Universalism. Because personally, I find our principles rather ineffectual. They are wonderfully agreeable. In fact, I've never met anybody who would oppose them with any degree of passion. Which begs the question, if our principles aren't the least bit challenging, can they even be effectual? What do they mean if they don't challenge us? I think it might be beneficial to have a set of principles that continuously and endlessly challenge us. We agree to affirm and promote these principles. It's an agreement to affirm and promote. They do not bind us in any way to live by them. Years ago, I was a chaplain at a youth camp. This was in California, back when my son was 2, and he was with me the whole time. I was up at high in the mountains of California, and these were mostly 16, 18-year-olds. And I was the chaplain, so I had really light duty. It was just mostly hanging out with my son. I went to a few meetings, taught a few different things, did some worship services. But one of my favorite things there actually was working with the camp leadership, which was the youth. It was the youth empowerment, and they were the leaders, and the adults were the advisors. And so something came up one day. One of the kids did something that broke the rules that were all agreed upon, and the leadership, the youth, had to decide what to do. What would be the repercussions of him breaking the rules? And so there was a really prolonged discussion about this. And I was so impressed how the youth used our principles and use them to make the decisions, what they would do. And even when our first principle and our seventh principle can be in conflict at times, when you have the community versus the individual and what is more important and how do we, and they wrestled with this. And I love to see it. And I don't see too many Unitarian Universalist adults that do the same thing. We don't wrestle with them in the same way. And so, for myself, I've chosen, instead of just using the principles as a guiding principle, I've actually chosen a statement of faith. A statement of faith that challenges me to wrestle with what it means and how to live it out on a daily basis. Now, faith, as I understand it, is not a preconceived opinion that is not based on reason or actual experience. What I just defined is literally the definition of prejudice. Literally, I cut and paste it right out of my computer. But that is what so many people think faith is. A preconceived opinion that is not based on reason or actual experience. Right? Isn't that how most people view faith? That is prejudice. Now, generally speaking, a belief is anything we accept to be true, whether it be because of evidence or in spite of the evidence. And it can be rational or irrational. There are any number of belief systems, some religious, some philosophical, and some scientific. And beliefs serve as the lens through which we interpret and interact with the world. Faith, on the other hand, is the ability to take action in the face of uncertain outcome. It's the ability to take action in the face of uncertain outcome. Where beliefs are oriented towards our thoughts and can be described and defined, faith is a felt experience that most often defies explanation, kind of like the wonder in the reading that we shared. Faith is grounded not in the certainty of our beliefs, but in our doubts. Without the courage to face our doubts and our fears, it is difficult to grow in faith and reach our fullest potential. It's easy to profess belief in the comfort of our homes or the safety of our place of worship. However, the most difficult task of integrating our beliefs into our daily life requires courage, and it requires faith. As we attempt to integrate our beliefs into our lives, our beliefs will be tested, sometimes challenged, and doubts will arise. To act in spite of those challenges, in spite of the doubts, to act is faith. That's why I've made my statement of faith. It is very simple. Life is divine. Period. Short, sweet, incredibly challenging, and annoyingly difficult to live up to. Every single day it forces me to consider the effects of my actions and my inactions, my words, and even my thoughts. For me, it combines our first and seventh principles into a single statement and adds the challenge of living up to that word divine. What does it mean to say that life is divine? For that matter, what is life? We've established certain criteria or characteristics of life, but there's no unequivocal definition of life, the cause of life, the why of it. It remains beyond our understanding. How did life emerge out of inorganic material? How did carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, and all the other things give rise to a conscious being capable of asking this question? Why did life emerge from inorganic material? Why did consciousness emerge in living beings? When inorganic compounds gave rise to living cells, the cells included the individual characteristics of those compounds while transcending the characteristics of those compounds. The first cell was able to do things that the inorganic material could not. It could move, it could adapt, it could grow, respond to stimuli. And as individual cells evolved into more complex organisms, those complex organisms included the individual cells and transcended their abilities. When one of those complex organisms achieved consciousness, it transcended and included everything that came before it. And as consciousness continues to evolve, it follows the same patterns of inclusion and transcendence. Human brain, for example, it has components that directly reflect our evolutionary history, with each level including what came before while transcending the possibilities of what came before. You have the lizard brain, the mammal brain, and the human brain. To to imagine that we have reached the pinnacle of intelligence, the peak of consciousness, to imagine that evolution is completed in us. That is hubris defined. We are not the end-all of creation. We are not the end of the line in evolution. Divinity is that which transcends me, that which is beyond my understanding, that to which I may evolve into, or that we may evolve into. To say life is divine is to say that it has transcendent qualities, qualities that cannot be explained through objective means alone. To say life is divine is to say that life cannot be understood through objective observation and description alone. Because all the objective tests in the world cannot begin to answer the why of it all. Divinity, transcendence, is a subjective experience. And utilizing the full range of human consciousness, we can experience the transcendent qualities of all life and of being itself. We can do that. Have you ever considered where our inherent worth and dignity comes from? Why do we say that all people or all beings have inherent worth and dignity? Where does it come from? If we don't know where it comes from, then why do we say it? Our inherent worth and dignity exists because we are each and all a part of a much larger whole. Because life itself is a transcendent quality of existence. It is our relationship to the whole, our unique contribution to the web of life that bestows worth and dignity upon us. And if we agree that it's true for all people everywhere, is it not so for all life, all beings, and all things? Does not every form of life contribute to the whole? Isn't every form of life as wonderfully miraculous as any other? And my statement of faith forces me to face that truth every day while struggling to live up to what this statement implies. And it is a struggle. One that I fully expect to never fully master. Galileo, like so many seekers of truth, was convicted not on the merits of his claims, but rather the challenge it offered to accepted doctrine. An inconvenient truth is still the truth. And the more I learn about our objective reality, the more I explore subjective consciousness, the more I claim that life is divine. Not because it is what I want to believe or choose to believe, rather it's where the pursuit of truth and meaning has led me. And by making a statement of faith, divinity was a word I'd given up. I did not appreciate how others defined it, but in my own pursuit, I found it fit. So often words like divine and sacred and souls or prayer, being so misunderstood, they're dismissed out of hand, even though we use them in ways we don't always understand within our services. Like books or movies we read when we were young and encounter again as an adult, I have found that these words have the ability to change and grow with us. Now, I'm not interested in converting anybody or to convince you that I'm right. The truth of my statement isn't dependent on anybody else accepting it. But I do invite you to consider a statement of faith of your own. One that can change and grow with your own quest for truth and meaning. If the spiritual path with Unitarian Universalism isn't challenging, isn't pushing us, then why are we here? Why go through all this trouble? If we aren't here to transform ourselves and our world, then why go through all this effort? Is it just entertainment? I hope it's something more. So I invite you to make this a practice of yours. Make a statement of faith. Make it today, even if you change it tomorrow. But do it. And make sure it challenges you, pushes you. And see where the truth leads you. Because that is what we say we do. Pursue truth. And even when it's an inconvenient truth, keep pursuing it. And then try to live it. So be it. Amen. Blessed be.